Okay, moving right along. Now that we have cropped all of our images, maybe use some rotation or perspective crop as well, but they're all the same size, we're going to make our new document. So we're going to go to File, New, and I asked you to make it a specific size. We want it to be in pixels, so choose that from the drop-down. And I'd like the width to be 900 and the height to be 600 and the resolution to be 72 again. So we cropped all of our images to have a resolution of 72. We're going to make this document at a resolution of 72. So what we should see when we copy and paste them into here, they're going to appear to be the same size as they were when we saw them at 100%. Okay, so the first step is we're going to start taking our images. So go to your first image and we want to select it all and then copy it, and then we're going to paste it over here. So you can go to select all from the main menu, or you can use the keyboard shortcut. And then we're going to copy it, and you can go to Edit, Copy, or you can use the keyboard shortcut. And then we're going to go to our new document, and we're going to paste it. And you can go to Edit, Paste, or use the keyboard shortcut. Okay, and then take our Move tool and move it over. Just basically because we're going to set them all up as we want them in a grid later, but they're all going to paste right into the middle, so they're not right on top of each other. When I'm done with that, I can just close this image out, and it's going to ask me if I want to save it. And if you want to save it, you can, but I would save it as a different name so it doesn't override your original. But I'm just going to close it out, and I am not going to save it. So I still have my original before I did the crop and everything, the one that I copied over from my SD card. So I'm not saving that. And then I'll go to my next one. This one is, it looks like it's already selected, but in case not, I'll just do it anyway. I'm going to do it with keyboard shortcuts, Control A, Control C, go to this document here, Control V, paste it in and move it over. Okay, close that one out and continue on. Okay, now that I have them all copied and pasted over here, the next thing I need to do is arrange them. So to help you arrange them, we have the Move tool, but you want to make sure the Move tool has Auto Select on, so meaning that it's been checked. If that's not on, and let's say I want to move this image here, I have to find the right layer over here. Notice, by the way, when we copied and pasted all of these images in, they all came in on their own layer. The background is my white. So I'd have to find that layer, and one way I can do that is by looking at the thumbnails and try to figure out which one it is. Also, I can click on the eyeball to turn off a layer, and that will help me figure out, okay, it's this layer. So I would select this layer, move it over, and then, okay, I want to get this one, I want to move this one. So same process. I could kind of look over here and say, I think it's this one, turn it off. Nope, I was wrong. Okay, I think it's this one, turn it off. But if I have auto select on, I could click on any image and it's going to automatically select the correct layer for me. See, I click on this one and it selects it. So that's very helpful. Now we want to just basically get the lines on one side and the points on another, and it doesn't matter. You could put the points on the top and the lines on the bottom. Now what I've asked you to do as part of your challenge is to figure out some even spacing. So let's talk about that. Up here under View, you may want to have Snap on. That helps you get things in position, like snapping to guides, which we'll set up. You may want to have your rulers visible. That can help you. Those are up here on the top and on the side. And I'll just show you, once you have your rulers visible, you can do what's called set up guides. So let's say I've decided I want everything to have a 1/2 inch margin at the top. I could go to my ruler, and I'm going to click and drag down, and it's dragging down a guide, and I'm aligning it with my vertical ruler. So I could put it ending it up here at 1/2 inch, and it gives me a guide. And now if I have that snap to feature on, they would all snap to that guide. All right, so that could be very useful. And now if I wanted to set up a guide for my vertical margins here, I would go to my vertical ruler, click into it and drag it out. But I'm looking up here, up at my horizontal ruler to find like where my 1/2 inch marker is, if that's what I've decided I want it to be. I won't actually have enough space to do a 1/2 inch all around. But this is the challenge that I want you guys to figure out, like what would be good margins. Another thing that you could do to help you, so you have even spacing between them all, if we go to show, you could also choose your grid. And notice here under show, that's where your guides show up. So if you wanted to see your image without the guides wouldn't print out or anything. They will be saved so I can see your guides. But if I wanted to turn it off, I would go to show guides. And smart guides are those ones, if you didn't have what I have, which those little magenta lines that show up once things start to align, you might want to check those as well, have them on, in other words. So again, I'm under view, show, smart guides. Those are very helpful. And we also have grid. So the grid will also help you with alignment. So I could start aligning things. You see those, the kind of pink magenta lines that are showing up to show me that my edges are here aligned, or to show me if they're aligned into the center of each other. Those are those smart guides, all right? So you guys have to figure out what the spacing would be so that we have nice even margins, even spacing between all of our images, and make sure that you're leaving enough space so that we can put our text underneath, okay? So once you've figured that out, I'm just going to kind of scoot things. Also, by the way, when you have the Move tool selected, you can use your arrows on your keyboard. Sometimes I find that easier to do to get things exactly where I want them to be. And I'm just going to, this is not a perfect one. I'm just kind of roughly putting things in the right spot. But again, I can see here that this margin is not the same as this one. So that's what I'm asking you guys to do, is to figure that out. And I want to turn off my grid for right now. So I'm going to go back up to view, show, and turn off grid. So it's a little easier to see. And now let's go over the text. So remember, for the lines, we're looking to see, do the lines cut the space or do they join the space? Do they make the space active or passive? So I would imagine if they cut the space, then they're making the space active, meaning it feels like it's now different spaces, it's dynamic. In this example over here, I would say that the lines perhaps join the space and it makes the background kind of passive. It just makes it all one entity. So we're going to go over to the text button, and my last color I used was blue, so that's the first color that my text would come out to, but we know we can go up to the options bar and we can change that. And I could, if I knew already the font that I wanted to use, and I'd like to use something that is a sans serif font, so something that doesn't have our little embellishments at the end. We'll be going over that in more detail, like veranda. And 24 is probably a little large to start with. Let's start with a size 14, and we can always change that. And I want my color to be black. So I clicked on that, and I'm going to select black at the bottom and click OK. So underneath each one, I could just click, and I'm going to get this like starter text here, and I could type in join. I think these join the space, and I think it makes it passive. And then when I move my cursor out, I'm still active as the text tool. It becomes the move tool, which is kind of cool. So I could move it, but then if I misspelled something, I could go back in here as the text tool and I could change my spelling. All right, so once I get this in the spot that I kind of like it, we're going to go back in and fix the alignment, but we're just kind of getting them here initially. Then I can double click, or I can go up to the options bar and hit the check mark bar, and then that will commit to this. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing for the second one. I could also, with the text tool, click and drag out to make a bounding box. Either way, you can just single click, or you could click and drag out. All right, so I'm going to say that I think this one also joins, and I'll capitalize it because I capitalized before. Join, and I would say this makes the space more active. I see it as activating this space because now all of these little sections of the ground behind it are their own segments, and they feel a little more active, like their own little sections, where if without the lines here, it would be very, very passive. So I think they've activated what's going on in the background. And I'm going to go up and commit to it, and then so on and so forth. So I could continue down here, and I'll pick my first one. And so this one, I have 2 points here, so I could say top, the top one I think puckers, and bottom pierce. And then I would have to write if I think it makes this space active or passive. And I would probably put that on a line below because I've kind of run out of space. All right, so I'm going to commit to this, and then I just want to point out now, if I want to go back and edit any of these, just like my layers, they're all on their separate layers, or just like my images, I should say, they're all on their separate layers. If I want to go back and edit one of these, I'm not going to take the text tool and click on it, because that'll actually just create a new layer. I'm going to find the layer. Let's say I want to edit join active. I want to say, I changed my mind, I think this is join passive. And I want to double click the T in the layers panel. And now I can edit it, and I could go back and change this to passive. Okay, and then I'm going to commit to it. And if I want to then go and start working on my alignment, I'll just take my move tool, again making sure I have auto select on, and then I can start moving these around and using my smart guides to align them. And I may want to turn the grid back on. All right, so once you have all of your margins are even, so again, my margins aren't set up here yet, that takes a little bit more time, and everything here is in a nice line. So what we're looking for is a nice grid, and you've thought about, did the spaces for the lines, did they join or did they cut? And for the points, did they pierce or pucker? And then do they make the space active or passive? We're going to save it, and I would recommend saving it as 2 files. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save it on my computer. And I'm in my graphic design folder, in the folder for this practice. And I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file, so that should be your default. And I'll call it point line. And this is going to be the one for myself for going back to edit. So that's this one here that's going to save all of my layers. And then for submitting on Blackboard, I'm going to save a compressed version, which will be a JPEG. And so this time I'm going to choose JPEG format from the drop-down, and I can give it the same name, point line save. And it's going to ask me what size do I want to save it at, and I can choose the maximum. It won't be too large. We're going to leave it at this maximum and hit OK. And so now I'm going to open that up just so you can see what that version looks like versus my Photoshop one. The Photoshop one I still have open, and that has all my layers. And here's my JPEG one. Well, they look exactly the same if I go back and forth, but the difference is the JPEG one doesn't have any layers. So I can't go in and edit the text or move things around or do anything with it. All right, it's a much smaller file size though. So if I go to my files, and I compare the two, so the Photoshop file is 2 megs, which is still very small, but our files will get larger as we go on, and this one is only 434 kilobytes. All right, so the JPEG one is the one that you're going to be submitting. All right, that's everything you should have to know for this assignment. Try to have some fun thinking about what these simple things do. They're building blocks of graphic design, and let me know if you have any questions.